fate straight up cheated and threw 2 whole trucks right at me. I ended up inside the body of the most hated, broke, and weakest villain from the most brutally unfair game in the world, where I had 10,000 hours logged. Without a single drop of mana, I played the entire Imperial Council like a fiddle. I opened a convenience store right in the middle of an elite academy, and made the prodigy princess drool over my homemade sweets. The greatest paladin of justice became my personal donut fryer. The most dangerous mage on the continent ended up eating right out of my hand. And even the legendary Reaper is hunting me down just craving my food. The story kicks off on a quiet night in front of a traditional Korean convenience store. While on a phone screen we see the end of another match in a game called DZ Saga. And the guy glued to the device is our protagonist, who works as the store clerk. Meet Lee Young-jin, a 29-year-old guy with a herniated disc and no less than 9,999 hours clocked into the game he loves so much. But his peace doesn't last long, because the store owner pops up out of nowhere calling him the master of trash games. The guy finds the late visit weird and suddenly starts letting his imagination run wild, daydreaming that the boss finally hired a pretty girl to take over the night shift. But reality hits different, and the owner drops the news that he's moving to Australia. And to make things even crazier, he simply says he's handing the convenience store straight over to our protagonist, leaving the guy completely speechless, unable to wrap his head around that wild offer. The boss explains that he knows about his tough situation and asks what his lifelong dream was. The kid admits he always dreamed of owning a convenience store, and the man encourages him to make it happen. Shocked by all this, the boy asks why he's getting such a golden opportunity, and the owner gets emotional, explaining that 27 employees have worked there, but none put in as much effort as him. The young man bursts into tears, remembering that he always gave the best customer service, never messed up change, and handled everything flawlessly. Completely overwhelmed with emotion, he gets up from his chair to catch his breath, running out into the street without letting go of his phone, while the boss comments that he won't even stop gaming while crying, staying behind with a proud smile, watching the pure joy of his best employee, while the boy crosses the crosswalk, celebrating that this is the luckiest day of his life, when suddenly a truck honks loudly right behind him. The guy panics, realizing the classic anime truck came right for him. He manages to leap on pure reflex, trying to dodge his tragic fate. But his luck runs out fast, because a second horn blares down the street, and a second truck hits our boy head-on, sending him flying into the air, making him slam hard onto the asphalt while his phone goes flying away. Lying on the ground bleeding, he still finds time to complain that sending 2 trucks in a row is totally unfair, closing his eyes while thinking that since he's getting isekai'd anyway, the least he deserved was to be reborn super overpowered with a nice harem right when his game hits the historic milestone of 10,000 hours. But fate is sneaky, and he wakes up sitting in a chair, hearing a voice announce that he lost his position as council president and all his privileges. A bit dazed inside that unfamiliar body, the guy hears them ask if he has any last words, and when he looks forward, he comes face to face with a table full of uniformed nobles, led by a furious blonde girl pointing her finger and calling him Wolfram von Lohengrin. Right then it clicks that the young woman in front of him is the heroine Eve from the very game he's addicted to. Armik realizes he just reincarnated into the world of DZ Saga, but notes he's nowhere near being overpowered or surrounded by babes. And real panic sets in when he remembers that this Wolfram guy is literally the villain who dies in the prologue. While the girl presses on, asking if he's going to say anything before leaving, our protagonist remembers that in the original story the villain walked out all arrogant, claiming he didn't need that place, only for an angry student to jump out of nowhere the second he stepped outside and stab him to death, ending in a pathetic and humiliating way for being nothing more than a tyrant who abused his authority as the emperor's son. And to make matters worse, his misery didn't even stop there, since later in the story he came back as a weak zombie just to get sliced up by the heroine. Back to the present, the blonde decrees that out of mercy she'll let him leave the academy and live in silence. Knowing the deadly danger waiting for him outside, our boy decides to put on a confident smirk to bluff his way through, leaving the girl totally confused by that unexpected reaction. While on the inside, our MZ shaking with fear and sweating bullets, fully aware that taking one step outside will turn him into Swiss cheese. He then starts cooking up a desperate plan to find a way to stay inside the academy, racking his brain to find a loophole in that chaotic situation, until he remembers Eve's personality, who despite seeming cold and ruthless is a model student obsessed with following the rules. Seeing this as his only shot at survival, he smiles again and asks if she really intends to expel him. The young woman doubles down, stating that by imperial decree his authority as president and all his privileges have been revoked. finding it strange when the guy just asks her to confirm that last word. The boy then repeats out loud about having his privileges stripped, making everyone in the room curious, until the girl loses her patience and screams asking what he's trying to pull. And out of nowhere our Mick lets out a bizarre shout celebrating the loss of his privileges, startling the girl who almost jumps backward from that sudden outburst. She stands up pissed, telling him to cut the crap and get out of that room already. But the guy just stares right back at her, holding his ground, and settles comfortably into his chair, crossing his legs to state loud and clear that he isn't going anywhere, leaving the blonde utterly outraged while he tells her to read the imperial decree one more time very carefully, throwing the sharp question right in her face about where exactly on that paper the word expulsion is written, making every council member freeze without a single comeback. And while they try to process it, our Mech starts standing up, using his insane veteran knowledge from memorizing every single line of the Zephyrin Academy rulebook. He calmly points out that yes, the decree strips his president title and his privileges, but right after he asks if she remembers Article 1 Paragraph 8 of the institution's rules, walking over to the main desk and explaining that the regulations guarantee every student the fundamental right to study from the moment they enroll, making it clear that being a regular student isn't a privilege but a basic right, which leaves the blonde completely speechless. Our boy then steps closer with a sinister look and tells them to stop worrying about him and start organizing the council's new management, but the silver-haired elf counselor refuses to accept this and stomps her foot in anger, blurting out that he lost his special room in the Glass-Time dormitory, his monthly allowance of 80 million lin, and the special grading system, saying an incompetent fool like him could never survive without perks. But our Mick just crosses his arms with a mocking smirk and notes she thinks it's impossible for an imperial royal to survive like a commoner, staring right back at the elf and asking what she'll do if he proves he can pull it off, catching the girl off guard with so much confidence, while remembering his past grinding hard at the convenience store and stating he can easily survive, telling the counselor to apologize for judging someone's capability without knowing them. The elf gets so intimidated by the pressure that she starts stuttering, trying to actually apologize. But the blonde quickly cuts in, yelling at her comrade not to lower herself before that guy, glaring at our Mixie with pure hatred and thinking he's an extremely cunning man with his words, while the guy just chuckles and congratulates the young woman on the successful coup, saying that seat now belongs to her, reflecting to himself that if he had reincarnated as the protagonist Keltis, he might have even had a romance with the Imperial Root Girl, but since fate threw him into the villain's body, they are now complete enemies, until he turns to leave and the council leader orders him to wait. The new council leader refuses to let it go and angrily asks why he insists on staying without any perks at all, wanting to understand the reason behind so much stubbornness. Our Mix just gives a little smirk, keeping up the mystery, and replies with all the chill in the world, saying he still has an unfinished dream to achieve in that place, tossing his cape over his shoulders and dropping a hint that the president's chair is way too heavy for her, turning his back and walking out of the room with a wave like he doesn't owe anyone anything, which leaves the blonde boiling with rage as she takes over the leader post, and her furious scream echoes through the entire hallway while the guy walks off calmly, kicking off his new journey, determined to walk the brand new route of becoming the greatest convenience store owner in that academy. It's worth mentioning that this institution doesn't just teach magic and swordsmanship to its students, but also covers subjects like etiquette, commerce, management, and even hunting and farming techniques, allowing students to build fortunes through their own hustle or stand out in the study of the arcane arts, proving their skills in bloody battles against monsters and living in a true learning paradise, where internal shops and businesses drive the daily grind of anyone looking to make it big, with entire parties exploring dangerous dungeons to claim fame and glory. And our boy's first stop is straight to the Academy Central Bank to check the savings he inherited, only for the teller to flash a friendly smile and casually show a balance of exactly 0 lin, leaving the guy in absolute shock, unable to believe what he just heard, with the clerk confirming that his account is completely wiped out, which makes our protagonist go sit on the entrance steps lamenting his own misery, cursing the stupidity of the former owner of that body and wondering what on earth the villain blew so much cash on. And when he pulls up the bank statement, the situation gets even more depressing, with insane spending on luxury clothes, shady magic items, and a fortune lost at the casino, realizing he just inherited the role of this broke deadbeat. But suddenly, a light bulb goes off in the kid's head, remembering that there must still be something valuable left in his dorm room. He sprints to the luxurious Glass-Time dorm, but upon reaching the door, he gets the notice that his eviction process has already gone through, freaking out seeing how fast they kicked him out of there, while all his luggage and an exquisite sword get dumped onto the ground with 0 care. with the staff member thanking him for his stay with a straight face before saying goodbye, and slamming the massive doors right in our boy's face. Thrown out empty-handed, he decides to improvise, spreading his few remaining belongings on the stone floor to try and make some quick cash, setting up a makeshift flea market with a sword, wand, and magic books while waiting for an interested buyer. It doesn't take long for a student to walk up curious, asking if that's an antique and how much it costs. But when our Mick looks up with a dead serious and gloomy glare, the poor student goes into full panic mode, recognizing the face of the former tyrant president, bolting away at full speed, screaming and desperately begging for forgiveness for his mistake, making the young man sigh, remembering that the reputation of this body's owner is the absolute worst. Even so, he knows he has some very valuable items there that are worth good money, starting to think of a better way to sell everything at a fair price without scaring the customers. And his first idea is to head straight to the dwarf guild called Maestro to try and sell the blade. He enters the smithy, showing off the sleek sword and asking if that isn't a true masterpiece. But the red-braided dwarf blacksmith crosses his arms and instantly refuses, saying he wouldn't buy that even if it was the holy sword of the wind, leaving the boy frustrated, unable to understand the reason for so much hostility, since dwarves are crazy about rare weapons. But the brute just tells him to get the hell out of there right away. Not giving up easily, the guy heads over to the elven guild called Yggdrasil, confident that if the dwarves turn down the sword, the elves will definitely drool over that top-tier magic cloak. But the elf merchant also rejects the purchase right off the bat, making the boy ask if he even knows what that piece is. The elf instantly recognizes that the cloak was woven from the purest silk of El Condor. The guy excitedly confirms, saying it's a rare gem, and asks why they don't want to make a deal, only getting a cold reply that they simply are interested in buying anything from him. Armic leaves the building crushed, dragging his luggage and complaining about the humiliation, remembering his gaming days when the first thing he did was raise affinity with factions to unlock perks and rare items. Realizing that this time his affinity meter started straight at rock bottom, with everybody hating his guts. Trying to understand the reason behind this boycott while the dwarf blacksmith watches him hiding behind a pillar, until the guy senses someone's presence and looks back, catching the dwarf red-handed spying on his every move. The short guy gets awkward and starts coughing, trying to cover up his embarrassment, while the boy unsheathes the bit of the blade right in front of him, making the blacksmith gulp in pure temptation. Armix notices the dwarf's weakness for quality weapons and baits him, asking what the real reason is for refusing to buy something so good. The dwarf loses his patience and calls him shameless, saying the problem isn't the goods but Wolfram von Lohengrin himself doing the selling, leaving the guy intrigued as the dwarf says there is a limit to how obnoxious someone can be. The blacksmith explains that news of his removal spread early on and all major factions in the academy were instructed to cut all his perks. The boy argues that even without the president title, the guild could still buy the gear, asking if they thought the price was too high. But the dwarf scoffs, saying 50 million ren for the sword and 30 million for the cloak is pocket change to them, revealing that things run much deeper because in the institution's hierarchy only the council president gives them orders, and the new president who took over swore our Mac to death and put the guy on the campus-wide blacklist. Finally understanding the trap he walked into, the boy puts on an awkward smile, thanks him for the valuable intel, and says goodbye to the dwarf to figure out his next move, walking alone through the courtyard, dragging his bags under the thoughtful gaze of the blacksmith, who notices that spoiled noble seems strangely different from the monster he was before. As evening falls, our boy collapses onto a park bench, exhausted from the marathon, lamenting that the reincarnated life is turning out to be way harder than he imagined. Aware that without being affiliated with any academy organization he can't sell items, has no housing, and can't even land a job, desperately needing to find a group to join, when suddenly his stomach starts growling loudly, demanding food, and with no strength left to get up, he lies on the wood, admitting he's dying of hunger and exhaustion, watching the sun go down as heavy sleep takes over his body, ending up knocked out cold in the middle of the plaza with nowhere to go, until a shadow covers his face, and a deep voice catches his attention in the dead of night, revealing a giant man staring down at him while holding a wooden crate right in front of him. Armix reeks up, startled, thinking he's about to get ambushed, but the man who appeared quickly tells him to calm down and says he didn't mean to scare anyone, holding out a bag full of warm bread to satisfy the boy's hunger. The guy's mouth waters just smelling the aroma of the food, and without wasting a second he starts devouring everything, washing it down with a drink so it goes down smooth. The big guy laughs and comments that the former council president is in a truly miserable state. Our boy wipes his mouth and says he just hasn't found a roof over his head yet, genuinely thanking him for the help. But right at that moment, it clicks, and the young man's eyes go wide, asking a bit suspiciously what that guy's name is, instantly remembering the days he spent pulling all-nighters playing at the convenience store. Since in the original game there was a broke vendor named Phil who begged anyone to take over his grocery store, but no player ever bought it because it was a guaranteed loss. The man confirms with a smile that his name is Phil from the grocery store and that he wants to dump that money pit, lighting a spark of salvation in the protagonist's mind, who, without thinking twice, grabs the merchant's hands with all the strength in the world, leaving the man startled by so much excitement. And with a look of pure determination, our boy tells him to sell that failing business to him right away. The vendor beams with joy and accepts the offer on the spot, celebrating his sweet release, saying he can finally return to his hometown in peace without carrying that burden. The system notification confirms that the young man has now taken over Phil's grocery store with an open arms celebration, but the moment he takes over the counter, absolutely nothing magical happens. And to the surprise of zero people, the shop remains the exact same dumpster fire as before, with all the goods rotting in the crates, and not a single customer in sight, sending the boy straight to rock bottom with a bankruptcy notice, which makes our MC scream in despair at that ridiculous nightmare, waking up with a start behind the wooden counter, looking around and seeing that the shelves are still packed with fresh bread, carrots, and potatoes, breathing a sigh of relief, realizing all of that was just a bad dream, when suddenly the front door swings open making a sound, and the former owner shows up saying good morning and asking if the ex-president slept well, tossing a fat stack of 5 million rin onto the counter to the boy's surprise, explaining that every merchant needs some startup cash to restock and run the business. The young man remembers that to buy the shop he had to trade his sword and his noble clothes, which was only hard because of this body's terrible reputation, calculating that since all that gear was worth 80 million rin, the actual cost of the grocery store came out to 75 million, which he considered a pretty fair deal. Until the man mentions that when he brought up selling the spot, the building's landlord asked to meet the new owner. The boy finds it weird and asks if she really wants to meet Wolfram himself, while a gentle voice apologizes for the slight delay. The merchant says the visitor arrived right on cue and says goodbye, heading out of the shop, while firm and elegant footsteps echo across the wooden floor, bringing a cold and at the same time breathtakingly beautiful voice that sends chills down our protagonist's spine, revealing a girl with long hair flowing all the way down to her waist, making the guy recognize that presence instantly. None other than Ayla Tristar, the second-best third-year student in the magic department and the mid-boss of Act 3 in DZ Saga, on top of officially being Wolfram's own fiancée. The noblewoman stands there staring at the boy from across the counter in complete silence, until she loses her patience and tells him to say something. The boy then decides to act natural and asks why she came looking for him. The young woman scoffs in disdain, saying that buying that grocery store is a clear message aimed right at her, asking if he's begging for help or if that's some spoiled demand, leaving the boy sweating bullets while calculating every single word, remembering that the only real quality the former owner of this body had was boundless ambition, with the fiancé mocking him to his face, asking if after losing the presidency to his younger sister he came crawling to lean on her, warning him arrogantly that there's no room for losers by her side, and telling him to get out of that place once and for all, which makes our McClun panic trying to cook up an emergency exit, since the girl is the eldest daughter of the Tristar family that controls 20% of Imperial trade, on top of being a prodigy who already masters Tier 3 magic with 19 mana points. And with the weak body the boy has right now, any serious attack from her would send him straight to the afterlife. He then focuses completely on using all his game knowledge to find the right answer to survive, analyzing the noble psychology to land a checkmate in this dialogue, calling the girl by her full name with utter coldness, and letting out a mocking laugh saying it would be ridiculous to think he'd care about a building as simple as that. The young woman gets furious and asks what he just said, while the guy claims with a superior posture that a man like Wolfram von Lohengrin would never waste time decorating insignificant buildings, reminding her that her moniker is the Witch of Rebellion and the Lady of Ambition. She calls him a liar and demands to know why he bought the place if not for that, and the boy fires back with a piercing glare that he did it purely for his ambition, leaving the fiancé completely stunned and speechless at that impactful answer. She tries to hide her shock and argues back, saying it's ridiculous to talk about ambition when he's cornered in the dirt. But the boy flashes that cocky grin and assures her he isn't cornered in the slightest and hasn't given up on anything, opening his arms wide in the middle of the room and declaring firmly that this simple convenience store will be the launching pad for his grand empire. leaving the girl confused, trying to understand what the real purpose behind that shop actually is. Our boy takes a few calm steps, remembering that what she really expects to see is a Wolfram who never loses his hunger for power, deciding to play that exact role and stating he will use the grocery store as a front to gather the Academy's greatest talents under his command. The fiancé scoffs, asking if he even has the ability to recognize real talent, but our mech casually grabs a piece of bread and brings up that druid girl she values so highly, making the noble's eyes widen. Adding in details about the magic department, freshmen focused on fire spells, and the prodigy from the night division who carries the potential of a sword saint, which leaves the girl pale and at a loss for words, wanting to know how he uncovered such well-kept secrets. The young man seizes the advantage with a victorious grin, asking if she still doubts his vision, claiming he only agreed to step down from the president's seat to have the freedom to rule the academy from the shadows, keeping that mysterious smile on his face while the girl's mind explodes with theories, pointing out that the greatest rebellions in history are always born in the most hidden and discreet places, earning the fiancé's respect by striking the exact weak spot of her obsession with rebellion. Our admits to himself that this cool quote originally belonged to the fiancée herself, but since he needed to survive, he stole the line with zero guilt. While the girl stands frozen, clutching her chest, completely shocked by what she just heard, the guy with an air of superiority says that trust is nothing more than an empty word that only gains value once results show up, taking a few firm steps and making it crystal clear he won't ask for her help with anything at all, turning his face with a threatening glare that chills the room instantly, warning that if she dares to stand in his way, he won't hesitate to eliminate her. While on the inside, our boy is sweating bullets from pure nerves, praising his own Oscar-worthy acting to play the ruthless villain. But the fiancé just takes the bait with a terrifying calmness, taking off a glove as sparks of purple electricity begin to crackle, levitating in the middle of the shop with magic circles and an absurd pressure that makes our MZ back up in fright, pointing at the guy and telling him to make the first move and try to eliminate her if he's capable, leaving our boy in a panic, realizing what kind of mess he got himself into. The gust of wind is so strong that it sends bread flying off the shelves, but our protagonist swallows his tears and shoves his hands into his pockets, maintaining an unshakable posture, making the girl finally dispel her magic and let the purple glow fade from her fingertips. While on the inside, the guy is freaking out, wondering if the previous owner of this body really farmed this much hatred from his fiancée, racking his brain in panic to come up with another excuse before he ends up turned to ashes, thinking that the limit of his luck had just reached its end, until the mage lands softly onto the shop carpet, turning her back and saying she knows full well he doesn't have the strength to win a fight against her, but she admits that the spark in his eyes didn't waver, and that his ambition feels genuine, heading out the front door and warning that she'll be watching his every single move. And the second the door shut, our boy's legs gave out and he collapsed straight onto the floor, sitting among scattered bread and carrots while breathing a sigh of relief for narrowly escaping death, yet still determined and promising that he will keep surviving every single day, until he falls flat on his face to give his brain a rest after that close call, grabbing the fat stack of cash on the counter with pure joy, announcing that his true journey as a convenience store owner in another world has finally begun, right after someone knocks on the door announcing that the shipment of goods has arrived, with a cute delivery girl with pigtails reporting with a smile on her face that the bill came to 3,524,800 yen. But the girl almost chokes in shock when she looks up and comes face to face with the feared former president. The young man asks tiredly if the customer's identity really makes any difference to her, and the delivery girl quickly salutes, saying an employee of the Maestro Guild simply does their job, thanking him for the order before sprinting away, leaving two massive wooden crates in the middle of the shop, while the boy leans on his shaky legs, unable to believe the delivery actually went through without a hitch, revealing that the Academy's big loophole lies right in the delivery service, since they refuse to sell directly to Wolfram as an individual. But according to Article 7 Clauses 13 and 15 of the school regulations and free trade laws, it just needs to order the boxes unloaded and dismiss the couriers, since no merchant can refuse orders placed formally by the grocery store's new owner, leaving our boy very satisfied with finding yet another loophole in the system's rules. While from the upstairs window someone watches the whole commotion in the courtyard sipping coffee totally relaxed, Ayla curiously notices that right under the student council's nose, her fiancé managed to fully restock the store, putting down her cup thoughtfully, and wondering what that man's next move will be. The following morning at the Academy's magic building, where groans of suffering echo down the hallways, revealing students with deep dark circles and dragging steps looking like actual zombies begging for the professor's help. And the story explains that magic is a long and exhausting path split into 9 levels after 4 years of basic studies, where those who reach level 7 graduate with honors, but the most ambitious decide to push further, knocking once again on the doors of knowledge to try and unlock the greatest arcane secrets, dedicating their entire lives to books without ever quitting their studies, pulling all-nighters in the lab to help with the master's complex experiments, or writing endless theses on new spellcasting theories. A group of people the world usually just calls graduate students, until one of those nearly soulless students hears a friendly voice praising their hard work, and when he turns around he comes face to face with our protagonist wearing a blue apron with a ladle in hand, inviting the guy to have some piping hot soup in that morning chill. The exhausted student starts sniffing the delicious aroma rising from the cauldron, charging forward desperately like a starving animal toward the cup of food, only for the boy to pull the container back, warning with a sly smile that a bowl costs 10,000 rin, leaving the zombie shocked by the steep price. But Armand immediately drops the ultimate marketing play, saying the customer is entitled to 3 free refills, making each serving come out to practically 3,000 rin each. The student doesn't think twice and downs the hot soup in a single gulp, feeling life return to his body instantly, and praising the divine flavor that seems to have saved his soul. And our boy just chuckles to himself, remembering he whipped up that masterpiece using leftover dried fish and vegetables stocked up in the grocery store, creating the famous dried fish soup that is perfect for curing hangovers, relieving fatigue, and recharging the energy of any exhausted worker. The students around comment in surprise that they never imagined seeing an imperial prince running a street stall right in the middle of campus, but our monsters as they want to see something even cooler, pulling back the cloth to reveal a box packed with colorful candy that catches the students' attention right away, proudly promising that these aren't ordinary sweets, but treats backed by the quality and guarantee seal of an imperial prince, leaving the guy's jaw dropped and suspicious at the same time, since everybody knows luxury palace sweets easily go for over 500,000 rin a piece. But our Mick announces he's selling a whole cup packed with them for just 50,000 rin, mentioning that each person can fill it to the brim as much as fits for the same flat price with a limit of 1 cup a day, stoking the greed and competitive spirit of the graduate students who already start laughing and rubbing their hands together, while the young man flashes that victorious smirk seeing his first customer successfully hooked. Meanwhile, in the main hallway of the Academy Central building, a red-haired student respectfully greets the princess and congratulates her on taking over the student council president's seat, and Eve replies with a radiant smile, thanking her upperclassmen for the kind words. The hallway chat continues with the princess saying she is really looking forward to the upperclassmen's research on light magic theory. But on the inside, she is suspicious, thinking the senior cares way more about politics than academic studies. The red-haired student takes the chance to butter her up and praises the incredible generosity of the new president, reaching out her hand and handing over a wrapped candy as a gift for the blonde. The princess brings the sweet close to her face and notices the amazing fruity aroma coming from the wrapper, deciding to unwrap the treat to see what it tastes like, only for the candy hitting her tongue to make her eyes go wide in shock from the explosion of flavor, making the girl break into a goofy ear-to-ear grin while the senior asks if she liked it. The young lady melts in pure bliss, feeling a refreshing and gentle sweetness that seems to wash away all her stress, asking curiously where the upperclassmen got something so delicious and if it was a research project by magic students. But the redhead flinches and stammers, asking if the princess truly didn't know the news, panicking, thinking this was all part of the blonde's secret scheme and that she just ruined everything. The president's expression shifts instantly, turning cold and grim as she demands to know the exact source of that candy, leaving the senior shaking in fear, about to spill the entire truth. Silence takes over the hallway for a few moments, until the piece of candy drops to the floor, breaking the tension, and the princess storms angrily down the halls while the treat rolls across the carpet. The scene cuts straight to the front of our protagonist's grocery store with the soup cart parked on the sidewalk, where the young man is lying face down on the ground, totally exhausted from work, complaining about tomorrow's shift, when suddenly the shop door gets kicked open with force and a loud scream calls out Wolfram's name, revealing Eve herself at the entrance, furious that she tracked down his hideout, which leaves our boy with a blank look, getting a strong sense of déjà vu. It is worth remembering that the first emperor of Lohengrin was an unmatched ruler in wisdom, magic, and martial arts, and all descendants of the imperial bloodline inherited abilities way above average, but out of all of them, the young Yvonne Lundgren was always treated as an absolute prodigy, having sensed the flow of mana at 4 years old and mastered tier 9 spells at just 5 years old, reaching 16 years old as an exceptional 5th-level mage admired even by the older graduate students, praised across the whole empire as the genius princess comparable to the dynasty's founder, though behind that flawless persona she hides a cute and goofy side that loves secretly stuffing her face with sweets. Back at the shop, the princess spots the dried fish on the shelf, demanding to know what he is cooking up, asking with disdain if opening a simple grocery store is part of some evil plot. But our boy fires back, saying calling that a conspiracy is a total stretch, correcting the girl with a smirk, stating that this isn't a grocery store but a genuine convenience store, leaving the blonde confused by that unfamiliar term until he explains it is a shop built to sell a little bit of everything. The guy stays lounging comfortably on the floor, saying he took over the place through a legal contract, and asks what business she has there. The princess refuses to believe it and holds out her hand, demanding to see the purchase deed right now. But reading the paper carefully, she starts shaking with rage, seeing that everything is completely legal, screaming in outrage that this can't be real while the boy just confirms it with the straightest face. The blonde then slams the counter, accusing the guy of tampering with the food he sold to the magic students. But our mix pulls out an official report from the magic department proving the purity of the ingredients, and asks if she is doubting her own upperclassman's competence, leaving the girl choking on her frustration while he tells her to get lost if she doesn't have any more valid complaints. Cornered with no way out, she resorts to bringing up the mysterious candy, admitting she tasted the sweet the students bought from his cart, turning red with anger and accusing the guy of using illegal funds to acquire sweets of such ridiculous quality. The boy asks with a smirk if the food was good, making the blonde accidentally admit the candy was way superior to anything supplied to the imperial family, until the young man casually drops that he grew and harvested the ingredients all by himself, pointing toward the backyard and saying he made everything using fruit from his own orchard, leading the princess to the garden behind the building, picking a red apple straight off the branch, and tossing the fruit into the girl's hands so she can see for herself. The young lady stares at the apple suspiciously, unsure if she should take a bite, but she can't resist and takes a nice crunchy bite. Our mech watches closely, waiting for that classic reaction she always has whenever she eats sweets, and instantly the girl melts completely, making that same goofy love-struck face that was her biggest charm in the original game. Though seeing it in person, the boy feels a twinge of annoyance, wondering if the older brother's body is rejecting her cuteness, calling the noblewoman by her full name to snap the princess out of her trance, offering her a whole bag of apples for just 10,000 rin each with a sweet brotherly discount, making the blonde huff in fury for falling for the merchant's smooth talk once again. Some time later in the council room, the elf Sylvia notices the president acting rather strange, sniffing the air in the room and remarking that there is an unusually sweet smell around. The princess plays it off with puffed-out cheeks, trying to melt the candy in her mouth quietly so she won't get caught, swearing in her mind that she'll let her brother live only until she eats all his candy and bankrupts his shop, popping another sweet into her mouth without anyone noticing, leaving the elf counselor totally clueless while the blonde beams with joy on the inside. Meanwhile, at the shop, our boy keeps tending to the magic seedlings he bought from the Yggdrasil Guild, spraying a homemade mixture of water and healing potion directly onto the soil, waiting for the right moment to apply the ultimate secrets to accelerated farming, popping open the positive affirmation music box that plays non-stop motivational phrases, remembering that this item was considered garbage in the game, only meant to cheer up depressed graduate students. But since it hid a secret in the code, it makes plants grow way faster, sweeter, and juicier to the rhythm of encouraging words, causing apple trees loaded with flawless fruit to sprout in just a few seconds. Next, the guy mashes the fruit pulp and brings it to a boil inside a large cauldron, stirring the broth carefully as steam rises into the air, mixing in a portion of edible slime jelly to give the recipe the perfect texture, pouring the mixture into round molds to harden and wrapping each piece, finishing up the famous Wolfram brand sweets that even conquered the demanding tastes of the imperial princess, filling an entire basket with treats ready for the next day of sales, but collapsing onto the floor exhausted, complaining that his body's stamina stat doesn't even hit 5 or 3 points, when the creak of the front door announces that someone else just walked into the shop, and even as he tiredly warns that business is closed for the day, a girl stops right in front of him. She looks down at the guy sprawled on the floor while he laments having zero stamina left to keep working, until she suddenly scoops him up princess style like he weighs nothing at all, looking the young man in the eyes and calmly asking if he is okay. Our mech awkwardly replies that he is in one piece, but on the inside he is stunned by the girl's monstrous strength stats. Soon after, the two are sitting on the living room sofa drinking tea, while the boy asks the reason for her visit, and the fiancé says she was impressed by his ambition, The girl praises the move to focus sales on the graduate students, saying that winning that crowd over is no easy feat, but his reputation is looking great. The young man listens closely as she highlights that he managed to build a solid bridge with the Empire's future top scholars. The fiancé then sniffs the air, asking about that sweet and sour scent around, prompting the boy to explain it is the famous candy that hooked his customers and offering her a sample. The noblewoman doesn't think twice and pops the sweet straight into her mouth, widening her eyes enchanted by the wonderful flavor melting on her tongue. Our boy breathes a sigh of relief on the sofa while the fiancée states she respects his ambition and won't be rude enough to demand the secret recipe. She crosses her legs decisively and announces she'll back his future rebellion, telling the boy to name a single thing he needs right now. Armaxing's fast remembering it is high time to start gathering new ingredients for the shop, asking straight up for the map of the Academy's East Forest. With the map in hand, our boy heads directly to the Night Department building, arriving at the mission reception desk where the bespectacled receptionist greets him with a smile. But the woman nearly falls backward in shock, recognizing the face of the former council president. Trembling with nerves, she asks for his request, and the young man explains he came as the owner of the Sector 8 magic grocery store to hire an escort to the East Forest. The receptionist hands over the form stating the quest provides meals, pays 8,720 yen per hour, and replaces hazard pay with basic healing potions. The boy reviews the list of available nights, knowing he needs to choose carefully to avoid trouble due to his bad reputation, until his eyes light up finding a very familiar name on the clipboard, flashing a victorious grin for finding the perfect bodyguard for the job. Before long, hurried footsteps echo through the hall with a girl apologizing for being late, snapping a cheerful salute and introducing herself as Neftarian from the Night Department, saying he can just call her Nefty. The boy greets her warmly, remembering that among DZ Saga players, this girl had a legendary nickname, known throughout the entire community as the Queen of the Bro. The two then take a seat at a private table to iron out the final details of the contract, with Armak asking for her name one more time to confirm, and the young lady repeats with energy that her name is Neptarian, but she prefers being called Nefty. The boy tells her to relax and drop the formalities, but the girl insists on staying professional, saying he is her boss now, making our boy let out a subtle smirk, looking at that upright posture and determined gaze identical to the original game. It is worth noting that she was raised as the young breadwinner carrying her family's heavy debt on her back, loyal to the Knight's Code but totally enslaved by capitalism since her dedication depends on the paycheck, living through such an absurd financial struggle inside the academy that there is even a sad rumor she eats wild weeds with pine resin just to avoid starving. Yet, having unshakable principles, she never takes dirty jobs and only tries to pay off her debts through honest quests, which puts our protagonist at ease knowing there is zero risk of getting scammed or extorted by her. The girl then takes the initiative and eagerly asks what the first task of the quest will be. The young man explains they will scout the outskirts of the East Forest, earning the minimum wage of 8,720 yen per hour, and instantly the knight's expression drops completely in disappointment. He tries sweetening the deal, mentioning that in case of injury he'll cover everything with up to 2 basic healing potions, but the girl keeps a deadpan face, showing zero excitement, until Armak plays his MasterCard, promising to cover all meals for the day with top-quality food, making the knight's eyes shine with excitement as she takes the deal on the spot, swearing on her honor to provide a flawless escort. Next, the boy asks how she prefers organizing the count and retreat system during the hunt. This method consists of setting a limit on monsters encountered and pulling back as soon as the quota is hit to avoid unnecessary risks, preventing the party from getting surrounded and caught off guard by stronger creatures. The young man sets the limit at 5 monsters encountered but offers an extra bonus of 5,000 yen for every additional creature she slays. The girl agrees to the terms, but sets a very serious condition of her own, warning that if the quest violates the knightly code she will turn her back and cancel the contract immediately. Armak simply nods, respecting the warrior's stance, adjusting his backpack and saying they should head out right away so they don't waste any time, and the knight salutes, excitedly marching ahead of her new employer. A short while later, the silence of the dense East Forest is broken by the sound of heavy breathing, revealing our boy practically dying of exhaustion leaning on a stick, while the girl laughs happily, noting that the slower they walk the more money she makes per hour. It is worth mentioning that the East Forest is a level 1 beginner zone filled with weak slimes and mini-goblins, and with a single strike, the knight slices a monster clean in half with zero effort, cheerfully announcing that the first count is done, while the boy thinks that even he could beat that creature. Until the two finally arrive at the famous Bean Garden, a secret area filled with colorful pods on every side. The boy cheers in relief for reaching their destination without busting the encounter limit, stretching his arms and announcing that their real work starts right now, leaving the noble warrior bewildered watching a member of the imperial royal family kneeling in the dirt to harvest plants. The young man calls the girl over to help with the harvest, but she refuses, saying that isn't part of escort duty, only for him offering 10,000 rin per hour to make the knight change her mind in a split second, cheering that harvesting is her specialty. The young man picks up a glowing blue pod and inspects it carefully, teaching the girl that the aqua bean loses massive quality if damaged and needs to be picked with the utmost care, making the knight obey respectfully while thinking the former president is completely different from all the terrible rumors she heard. In no time, the two fill massive baskets with a gorgeous variety of colorful beans, and our boy sits down exhausted on a log, announcing it is time for a meal break. The knight's stomach growls loudly with her drooling in anticipation of tasting a feast prepared by the imperial prince himself, only for the young man to casually hold out a piece of hard dark bread toward her, making the girl stare at the black bread with a completely blank and soulless gaze. And even while saying there is no problem at all, she starts drawing her sword with a psychotic smile on her face. The boy senses the danger and decides to tame the beast, promising to show off a cooking trick right then and there, picking out 3 special bean types including vanilla, milk, and aromatic bubble beans, tossing the beans into a thermal flask and asking if she can guess what happens when you mix them all up, crushing the ingredients at the bottom of the container, and shaking the bottle non-stop like a professional bartender mixing a drink, popping off the lid to reveal a super fluffy, glossy, and creamy white spread, spreading that sweet cream generously over the dry bread, and handing the upgraded snack with a wooden spoon for the knight to try, leaving the girl with her jaw on the floor and her mouth watering at the incredible dessert she just received. She then takes a massive bite of the cream-covered bread without a second thought, and that very instant her eyes go wide from the explosion of flavor, while our Mick chuckles, commenting that this mix makes even the hardest bread taste amazing. Listening to the girl sniffle with emotion beside him, she starts crying tears of pure joy, saying it is delicious, and asking how anything could pair so well with black bread, leaving the boy feeling awkward trying to understand the reason behind so much crying, until the girl vents that if she knew about this, she would have never spent her life eating weed salad with pine resin, confirming the poverty rumor was 100% real, when suddenly a golden glow flashes out of nowhere before our protagonist's eyes, projecting a magical system window right in front of him, announcing that the recipe was a critical success, creating whipped bean cream and unlocking the bean collector encyclopedia. The boy is left stunned trying to process that unexpected notification, reading on screen that his bean tasting stat increased and that he became the first person in history to perform a bean fusion, standing jaw-dropped, discovering he was the pioneer of this technique in the entire world. The system details that he earned the title of Pioneer on the Path of Beans and unlocked the category's official guide, gathering energy particles that begin gathering directly in the palm of his hand, delivering a glowing, colorful 7th-level random bean as a special reward, making the young man stare at that magical gem, surprised by the turn of events. By dusk, the two finally reach the stone gate at the exit of the East Forest, with the young man praising the good work and the knight thanking him for the opportunity, beaming with joy and saying that meal was flawless without a single flaw, explaining that at the academy everyone always taught that beans were dangerous plants that exploded or poisoned anyone who handled them wrong, tearing up with emotion, admitting she never imagined combining those beans would result in such heavenly food, guaranteeing with absolute certainty that this was the first time in her life seeing a cooking technique like this. Our boy realizes his hunch was right and asks directly if the bean combination method is truly unknown to everyone, and the girl replies casually, saying there are hundreds of species out there but nobody wastes time messing with them, making the boy freeze in shock, unable to believe that absolutely nobody in that universe had the curiosity to test these mixes, remembering the system alert stating he was the first living being to register that discovery. Back at the shop, the young man leans on the counter, organizing his thoughts and reflecting on everything he learned, putting together a mental summary of the practical rules of that new world, starting with the fact that the Academy's supply distribution network is so terrible that almost everything has to be crafted by hand, which explains why potions cost 100 times more than he remembered from the game and equipment is worth 10 times more. And the second point is that adventures are so dangerous and restricted that nobody even dares to explore ingredient properties, remembering their chat where he asked if students usually went on quests on their own free will, where the knight herself found the question bizarre, saying nobody is crazy enough to risk their life out there without a reason, making the boy realize the gravity of the situation, since this is a real world where almost nothing has been discovered because people are terrified of the unknown, highlighting the contrast that in video games an adventure seems easy and free of real risks. But in real life, every person only gets a single life and nobody wants to get hurt or die in battle, preferring to shelter behind the safe walls of the academy instead of braving the perils of the world, which makes Armek certain that if he tries following the path of the original protagonist Kelter, he'll just end up dying for nothing, laying out his 3 main goals from now on, with the first being to make a living as a convenience store owner, and the second being to learn at least 1 useful skill before graduating, holding up 3 fingers to lock in his ultimate objective, which is to stay far away from the game's main plot and enjoy a 100% peaceful and safe life, only for his peace to last exactly 3 seconds until the door swings open and Princess Eve storms in calling his name. The guy rubs his forehead tiredly and asks what his sister wants this time, and the new president slams the ledgers onto the counter, yelling at him to explain how he managed to blow the student budget in such a ridiculous way, leaving the young man in shock seeing the scale of the financial disaster he inherited, remembering that the previous owner of that body threw money around like it was trash, making the girl release an ominous aura, wondering how she'll balance the council books with the deficit he left behind. Our boy tries to calm her down, inviting her in and offering a drink to cool off tempers, presenting the convenience store's new star item, which is a creamy strawberry shake made by fusing fruit beans, milk, and sugar. The two sit on the sofa with the blonde asking again what the name convenience store even means, and the boy explains it is a business focused on meeting all student needs. The princess gets suspicious and tosses a little jab, asking if of all people he decided to become a benefactor to the students, but taking the cup she pauses and inspects the drink's consistency, mentioning that the proper way to enjoy it would be using ice magic to chill the mixture before drinking, lecturing the guy that if the shop is focused on convenience, it should serve the product ice cold from the start. But the young man gives an awkward chuckle, remembering his magic power stat sits at a measly 3 points, making the princess let out a long sigh of disappointment seeing how weak he is, holding out her hand and casting an instant freeze spell over the glass, turning the shake into a perfectly chilled and refreshing strawberry smoothie, grabbing the straw and taking her first sip of the recipe, only to be transported to a strawberry paradise the very next second, with her eyes sparkling in bliss, breaking into that same goofy starstruck giggle while Armek tells her to shut up from secondhand embarrassment, draining the entire cup in just a few seconds until not a single drop is left, wiping her mouth and pretending the taste was merely okay before asking for the retail price. Hearing the boy set it at 12,000 rin, the blonde finds the price steep and suggests that instead of selling it right away, he save the product for a launch during the freshman welcome festival. The boy says he'll keep it in mind, making his sister complain that he should at least thank her for her golden advice, while the guy just stares back in silence with a totally blank expression. The princess then looks at the second full glass in her brother's hand and gulps in temptation, turning her head away in a pout to hide her urge to ask for another cup, making Armek flash that mocking smirk seeing his sister's weakness, telling her he won't charge for the shake but demands that she buy at least 1 bag of sweets, with the blonde screaming that she is completely broke. At the end of the day, the two step out onto the sidewalk with the president saying those ideas will help her draft the budget proposal, and before leaving she warns in a serious tone that the council and the academy will truly change under her leadership, telling the guy to stay quiet in his corner minding the shop. The boy replies telling her not to worry because that was exactly what he planned on doing, trading sparks of rivalry in their eyes like 2 stubborn siblings refusing to back down, until the guy's expression turns thoughtful watching his sister walk away, calling the girl back saying he needs to ask a single quick question, wanting to know who was picked as this year's freshman representative, and the princess turns around suspicious, asking why he is so interested in that topic. Armek brushes it off, saying it is just curiosity and he has no intention of getting close to the kid, hearing the princess mention that to everyone's surprise this year's representative is a commoner, but she replies that the new representative's name is Kelteris, revealing the cheerful face of the redhead who is the grand hero of the original DZ Saga story, making Wolfram's gaze turn sharp, realizing the main events are drawing near, as dusk falling over the academy signals that very little time remains before the game's original plot finally begins unfolding right before his eyes, placing this makeshift convenience store owner right in the path of destiny, while the boy thinks about the investment needed to keep the stall running, scooping hot soup straight from the cauldron the following day, calling the next person in line with his apron and chef's hat looking spotless, handing out meals to a massive line of magic students who express deep gratitude for the young man's kindness. With our boy focused on the countdown to the freshman orientation ceremony, remembering that in DZ Saga the endings change drastically based on the chosen heroine and the choices made by protagonist Keltris, like, for example, when the player picked the magic department and went down the romance route with Princess Eve, unlocking the classic Princess Knight ending where the redhead became the girl's protector sword. But there were also tragic endings of total destruction, mostly because of a certain troublesome heroine who caused nearly every bad end and gave headaches just thinking about her. Understanding that the fate of that entire world depended exclusively on the hero's performance and choices, praying from the bottom of his heart that the kid does a great job and saves the world while he focuses strictly on selling his goods in peace, until a familiar voice asks if he already hit his daily sales quota, revealing Elytrister, saying that at this rate the trumpet of rebellion will sound very soon. The young man sighs tiredly, stating he is plotting nothing of the sort, and asks what she wants. The fiancé lets out a long, discouraged sigh, and reveals she was picked by the academy to be the official representative for this year's education duel. The boy gets it instantly, remembering she holds the rank of runner-up in the third-year magic division, with the noble complaining that this tradition of upperclassmen teaching freshmen a lesson is pure barbarism, and vowing she will abolish it once her rebellion succeeds. And the young man recalls that this education duel is an exhibition match where the top senior takes on the strongest freshman to test the rookie's abilities, remembering vividly how that scene played out in the game's original storyline, where at the end of the fight the rookie's blade managed to graze the mage's cheek, making the redhead drop to his knees, cheering that he landed at least one clean hit on her, passing out right after with a smile on his face. And even though official victory went to the senior, the simple fact that a commoner wounded her face caused irreversible damage, shattering the noble's pride to the point where she spiraled into utter despair and became the dreaded leader of the third shadow faction, which makes our MZ look at his fiancée sipping a strawberry shake right in front of him and shaking his boots. The two then head into the private room to talk with the girl, wanting to know his plans for the orientation festival, and the boy replies he is setting up a sales stall. She reminds him that antitrust laws limit stalls to operating for only 8 hours a day, and asks what he'll do after that. The young man rests his chin on his hand, saying she shouldn't waste time worrying about him, since if the girl falls to darkness like in the original plot, the odds of a black crystal spear piercing Wolfram's fragile body are dangerously high, calculating that making his fiancée win the duel flawlessly without taking a single scratch is the best insurance for his own survival. He then decides to stoke the mage's pride, saying she wanted to see his wings unfold, and she confirms full of anticipation, only for the boy to throw out a provocation, saying he doubts her current self has the capacity to even witness those wings, staring the noble in the eyes and questioning if she truly holds the necessary qualifications for that, making the girl's gaze turn dark for being questioned so brazenly, rising from her chair in outrage that he dares doubt the third-year runner-up and Black Crystal Witch of the Academy, only for Mick to mock her with that smug face, reminding her that in the institution's 300-year history, there have already been 300 people in her exact position, pointing to the elemental candies, the cream bread, and the strawberry shake on the table, to show he created unprecedented luxury goods that never existed before, proudly beating his chest, claiming he proved he's 100% unique for the first time in 3 centuries, leaving the mage choked up with no way to counter his genius. The noblewoman asks, annoyed, where he is going with this talk, and the guy mentions hearing that this year's #1 freshman is a commoner with insane talent. She fires back right away, asking with disdain if he thinks she could actually lose, and the boy replies of course not, but warns that if she doesn't win with absolute perfection, it will also go down as a disgrace to the Treaster family name, making the girl fire a magic-imbued paper that leaves a small cut on Armic's cheek. She accepts the challenge, promising she will pulverize that cheeky commoner with a single strike, and telling her fiancé to watch the humiliation straight from the crowd, making our protagonist gulp in fear at the intensity of the monster he just awakened, while the young lady walks right past him heading out, slamming the front door shut as she leaves, leaving the guy alone on the mezzanine staring at the entrance, until reality hits him and he realizes she bounced without paying for the strawberry shake, noticing his fiancé left behind just a small note on the table before walking out, getting confused seeing that the paper is a pair of tickets to watch the festival from the VIP section, unable to understand why she gave him entry for 2 people. The scene then cuts to the shop kitchen, where the young man begins meal prep, thinking that freshman orientation is a massive celebration and the perfect chance to promote the convenience store to the whole campus, but he realizes he's still missing a high-impact flagship product since the candies and cream bread feel a bit too basic. And while the strawberry shake is amazing, it relies on rare beans that are tough to gather in large quantities. Deciding to roll up his sleeves to try baking batches of fresh bread with top-tier cream in the kitchen, but the moment he starts kneading the heavy dough on the wooden counter, he already falls into agony, starting to scream in pain when his arm locks up with an unbearable cramp from having a measly 2 stamina points, desperately covering his mouth, feeling motion sick just from working the flour dough, giving up on the idea and stepping out for some fresh air, going to sit on a park bench, devastated, wondering how he'll run a stall with such trash physical stats, sprawled on the wood complaining that he got exhausted from a simple 30-minute walk, until he hears a strange groan coming from the ground, turning his head back and looking curiously at the grass, where he comes face to face with the night Nefty crawling on the lawn in a pitiful state, crying that after tasting good food she could never stomach weege with resin again. The young man calls her name and the girl lifts her puffy, tearful face. The boy walks over asking what she is doing lying there like that, and the night weakly blinks calling out Prince Wolfram's name, until she gets the scare of her life and starts shaking her head in sheer panic, waving her hands in the air screaming that she has totally lost her mind for talking to a hallucination of that dreadful guy, rubbing her eyes desperately until she hears the boy calmly state he is no mirage, leaving her frozen. The girl asks in disbelief if that is really Prince Wolfram in the flesh, hearing the boy mockingly confirm that it is indeed that exact detestable guy, right in front of her, making the knight drop to her knees on the grass begging for mercy in panic while the boy asks what she was doing there. She tries to make up an excuse saying she was just meditating a bit, but Arma counters immediately saying she had her face planted in the dirt groaning from hunger, leaving the warrior totally embarrassed and twiddling her fingers in shame, until she works up the courage and timidly asks how much it would cost to buy more of that wonderful cream bread. The boy puts on that thoughtful look of someone who just found the flawless solution to all his problems, flashing that clever merchant grin knowing exactly how to flip the script, mentioning that the bread isn't even that expensive but asks if she even has cash in her pockets, making the girl tearfully admit she sent every coin she had to her family. The young man then dangles the bait saying that if she helps out with the shop work she can get plenty of food, putting the knight on high alert, swearing she will never get mixed up in anything evil. He calmly explains it is just simple support work, preparing and selling snacks for the orientation festival, while the girl suspects the academy's worst student wants to use her to get rich. But Armekdes drops an irresistible offer of 10,000 rin per hour, 1.5 times pay for overtime, and at least one sweet cream bread with every meal, making the noble knight of justice bow flat on the ground that very second, screaming she will work to the bone with absolute devotion. And the story recalls that in DZ Saga's main plot, when the player reached the second year and picked the knight department, they met an unforgettable upperclassman, a legendary swordswoman who wielded the sword of conviction with admirable righteousness, being so beloved as a mentor to commoners that the community even wondered why she wasn't one of the romance heroines, only for that noble warrior of conviction to now be inside the kitchen punching bread dough with unbelievable raw strength, with fiery glowing eyes and a terrifying aura of hunger, demanding to know when lunchtime finally arrives, leaving our boy in shock, wondering if he just corrupted the greatest paladin of justice in that entire world. The young man then inspects the fermented dough on the tray and announces the recipe is at the perfect stage, grabbing a metal cylinder to cut out the center of the dough balls and shape that classic ring form, making the girl almost freak out, thinking he is tossing the core away, until he explains he will use the scraps to bake other sweets. And the moment he hands the task over to his helper, she slices all the dough at lightning speed, leaving only after images in the air, finishing the entire tray in a few seconds and asking for more work with that hungry psycho glare. Next, the young man drops the rings of dough into the bubbling pot of oil to fry, commenting that she probably never saw fried bread prepared like this before, until the boy feels a bizarre presence behind his back and glances over suspiciously, seeing the knight drooling non-stop, completely mesmerized by the smell, practically sticking her fingers straight toward the hot oil while mumbling that the aroma is way too good, making Armix warn her with a panicked look not to complain as she ends up scorching her hand. But the warrior strikes a heroic pose, shouting that as long as her spirit stands, no boiling oil can scare her. The first golden rings come out of the fryer, perfectly crispy, and the boy asks her to guard the tray while he grabs the rest of the ingredients. But the temptation is so overpowering that the girl starts biting her lips and crying in agony, crying that it looks too delicious and cursing the prince as the worst villain in academy history for torturing her stomach like this. Spiraling so hard she starts unsheathing her blade, swearing she will deliver justice with her own hands. but our mech simply points out in a calm voice that drawing her weapon means no pay, ordering her to shove the sword back into the scabbard while she apologizes. The boy returns to the counter with piping bags filled with different creams and tells her to pay close attention, picking up one of the fried pastries with the utmost gentleness, inserting the tip of the bag to inject the cream filling until the ring gets nice and plump, leaving the knight wide-eyed, finishing a flawless tray of sugar-glazed donuts and filled donuts packed with strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, making the helper stare at that masterpiece with eyes sparkling in wonder, praising that she never saw such a gorgeous treat in her life, and asking for the noble name of that delicacy. Hearing the boy simply answer that it is a donut, the girl practically drools on the floor, finding even the pronunciation of the name remarkably fancy, commenting that she feels deeply honored to help make them but laments the tragedy of not being able to taste a single bite. Remembering he had promised to cover meals and getting hopeful before deflating, thinking she didn't deserve something so expensive, hanging her head in depression, thinking a sweet of that caliber was way beyond her reality, until she can't hold back and clasps her hands, begging for just one tiny mercy bite. The young man then points to the plate and tells her to sample the flavors to give an honest review of the product, telling her with a smile that she can eat one of each kind to test them out, lighting up the warrior's face with sheer joy, who screams in gratitude for the feast, grabbing 2 massive donuts, while our boy also takes a bite to check the quality, savoring the crispiness of the fried dough paired with the velvety cream, approving the final result, and confirming that this sweet easily meets the standard to become a massive hit at the festival stall, even though he feels that eating too much sugar eventually gets a bit heavy over time. But looking to the side, he catches the girl drooling at his donuts, so he gives her a nod to grab more, making her even happier, emotionally declaring that she completely misjudged the young man in the past, praising him as a kind person who genuinely cares about others, and claiming the world was unfair to his reputation, while Armik tells her to cut the flattery and talk about the food, grabbing the clipboard with pen and paper to jot down the ratings for each version, asking how the baked donut was. The girl licks her fingers, replying that it was less sweet but very tasty, and the boy notes the feedback. Next he asks about the simple sugar donut, and she replies that even without filling it was sweet and delicious. He questions the strawberry cream version, and the knight replies that since it had strawberry inside it was delicious, making the boy's hand freeze instantly, looking at his assistant with the face of someone who completely lost his patience and asking about the traditional cream donut. And the girl flashes that radiant grin, simply saying that since it had fresh cream inside, it was delicious, making Armik slam the clipboard on the table, baffled for expecting a proper culinary critique from someone who spent her life eating weeds with pine sap. The girl then snaps a high-energy salute, asking if the next quest is hunting a yeti's head in the northern snows. Hearing the young man instantly shut down the idea. The boy explains these snacks will be the main attraction of the freshman festival, and even with her useless review, the warrior assures him the nobles will drool over those sweets. But the young man turns with a serious look, saying it makes no sense to create something only for nobles to eat, since the stall is an extension of the convenience store. Remembering the stores from his original world and teaching that the true essence of a convenience store is being an accessible place where anyone can walk in, grab something quick and leave happy, asking his assistant what a fair price would be for each donut from a commoner's perspective, making the girl remember all the financial sacrifices a commoner freshman faces, paying fortunes on carriages and workgates to reach the academy, deserving the joy of tasting an amazing sweet at the festival, with the boy pressing the question to know how much a humble student could afford without struggling, leaving the knight deeply touched to the core of her heart by the young man's nobility and empathy, letting out a shy chuckle of admiration while the boy has no clue why she is reacting like that. And the warrior states, with blushing cheeks, that she judged him very harshly at first, suggesting the ideal maximum price for students would be up to 5,000 ren each. The scene then jumps straight to the big day of the Academy opening festival, with the Coliseum bleachers packed with students, where arrogant upperclassmen mock the freshmen, calling them mere rookies and wondering how many will survive the school year, until the crowd's eyes turn to the noble VIP box where Prince Wolfram is seated, sparking gossip and outrage among students holding grudges over past expulsions he caused. Our boy feels the heavy atmosphere and the hateful glares around him, growing tense, knowing he is surrounded by enemies of this body's former owner, alongside the danger of death. And when the guy decides to get up and flee before becoming a target for a shiv, Ayla Trister pops up right behind him. She says she finally found him. Hearing the boy ask if she knew about his festival stall, the fiancé looks at him with that cute gaze, wondering if he came all the way there just to see her. But our monster's about to strain his poker face in the world, saying no, making the noblewoman's expression drop instantly. but he explains he only came to check out the freshman demographics to plan sales, and mentions he is already leaving to set up the shop, leaving the mage fuming on the inside at her fiancé's cold attitude. The boy then says his goodbyes, mentioning that if she is interested, his stall is in the 3rd district of the commoner wing, while other students gossip nearby. She says she will only drop by if she has time and demands to know if he will attend the education duel. Hearing the boy return the same nonchalant answer, that he will only go if he has time to spare, making the girl blow up in frustration, remembering that he told her to win flawlessly, and now claims he doesn't even know if he will watch. Demanding a proper answer while Arma cracks his brain in panic to suit his fiancée without burning bridges. He then flashes a charming grin, saying her natural talent already guaranteed victory with her eyes closed, and with extra training the outcome is beyond obvious, catching the girl off guard with the sudden praise, stating with a leader's poise that her rebellion will be the most discreet, meticulous, and flawless of all, making the noble melt in pure vanity and admit with flushed cheeks that he knows her way too well. The young man takes the chance to conclude that with victory already locked in, having a crowd watch makes zero difference, and the mage laughs contentedly, praising the sharp vision of the wings of rebellion, while the boy wonders where on earth she pulls these weird phrases from. Before heading out, the boy asks if she already met her opponent named Kelturus, and the fiancée replies that she saw a red-haired kid with a farmer's face who looked ready to herd cattle. He asks if the rookie was carrying any unusual gear, and the girl tries to recall the details, until Wolfram's footsteps freeze on the ground upon hearing his fiancée describe a sword with a blood-red pommel resting on the boy's shoulder. Our mech asks tensely if it was a two-handed greatsword stretching from the shoulder down past the waist, and the noble confirms, making the young man turn with a dead-serious glare and warn her to be extremely careful with that boy's charging thrust, leaving the mage intrigued by the sudden warning. The young man then continues walking down the cobblestone streets of the commoner wing, with a heavy and worried look about what he just uncovered, remembering that the two-handed sword with a blood-red pommel was only supposed to appear much later, starting in Act 2 of DZ Saga. Unable to understand why the protagonist already holds that weapon now, crossing his arms, hoping his warning was enough to prevent his fiancée from taking any surprise hits, until he spots the structure of his snack stall just ahead, where the knight Nefti greets him with an energetic salute, wearing a crop top and skirt ready for business, drawing the attention of passing students who start whispering, unable to comprehend why the respected Sword of Conviction is working for the former delinquent president, while the boy realizes her reputation might get dragged through the mud just for standing beside him. The young man then scoffs in disdain and decides to play the villain role in front of everyone, putting on dramatic noble theatrics and loudly asking if she intends to preach moral lessons to him, as fits the great Sword of Conviction, leaving the knight confused until he winks and says out loud that today he will indulge her purely out of respect for her warrior spirit, making the street gossips by the performance thinking the knight is simply trying to steer the villain onto the path of good, with the girl quietly thanking him for the cover while he maintains the spoiled royal persona. The boy checks the oil vat and asks if the heat is preheated to the right temp, announcing they will start production using that special recipe and startling his assistant. The knight panics, saying that is way too dangerous and might bankrupt every other stall in the square, but the young man cuts through her fear by offering a sweet performance bonus, promising to pass 30% of net profit to her, which means 300,000 rin guaranteed for every 1 million rin made, making her drop to her knees with a burning aura, swearing absolute loyalty to her new boss. Our MC flashes that victorious smile and asks if she is ready for battle, and the girl draws the metal tongs like dual swords, promising to bring back the enemy commander's head. The scene then flashes back to a memory of Earth, where we see the entrance of a crowded subway station at sunset, with an exhausted salaryman walking down the stairs lamenting the brutal day while craving something to comfort his soul, when suddenly the man adjusts his glasses, catching a magical aroma in the air, drawn by a golden glow and mouth-watering steam drifting from a pastry shop, standing totally hypnotized, unable to comprehend what kind of wonder that is, screaming in dramatic bliss about that sweet buttery aroma that seems to pierce straight into his soul, snapping out of the illusion back to the academy, where a bespectacled student looking identical to the salaryman breaks out of his trance in front of the stall, surrounded by a crowd of students sniffing the air, craving a bite. The young man rushes to the counter desperately, asking what incredible food that is, and our MC pulls back the tray, revealing the famous golden pastries called Valley Manju, sending the crowd into mass hysteria, shoving money forward, demanding 2, 5, and even 10 boxes at once. The line blows up non-stop, with the boy telling Nefti to pick up the pace, and the knight enters a frenzy juggling dough and tongs through the air, serving customers at superhuman speed from both sides of the counter, while students stare at the donuts in the display case, shocked by the genius idea of frying dough and stuffing it with rich creams, turning the stall into the biggest hit of the festival with a massive crowd shouting orders without pause, until two humble freshmen, a blonde boy and a red-haired girl, look at their empty wallet, bummed out about not having enough coins, getting startled when a voice over the counter asks if they found the price too high, with Wolfram offering a warm smile and announcing that all freshmen are entitled to a special 50% discount, lighting up the two rookies' faces with joy for being able to buy the dessert, pulling in a massive wave of new orders from freshmen packing the front of the shop, while on the inside, our Mick lets out that devious chuckle, remembering that even at half price, he still rakes in heavy profits on volume. Hours later, the break sign is placed in front of the stall, with the boy sprawled on the ground looking like a walking corpse from sheer exhaustion, while his helper munches on a donut saying he held up better than expected. The girl cheers with her mouth full, that at this rate they will sell out all inventory, and the boy tells her to stop eating into the profit, until a roar of deafening cheers and applause echoes from the direction of the Colosseum, catching the knight's attention while the young man realizes the moment of the grand rookie showdown has finally arrived, his expression turning serious as he imagines how that battle will play out. Inside the arena, the crowd goes wild, waving glow sticks and screaming for the Black Crystal Witch, who is the Academy's eternal number 2, while fans chant her name, mocking in her mind that foolish spectacle set up to entertain the masses, until the opponent enters the arena, revealing a giant blade with a glowing red pommel resting across his shoulders, with the young hero Kelturus flashing that confident grin and presenting himself for the most anticipated duel of the year. From high on the podium, Princess Eve gives the official speech promising that the Student Council will ensure fair evaluations and proper distribution for all students, wishing everyone makes the most of their academic life. While down in the arena, the two opponents stare at each other in silence. Yahello watches the scene, thinking that apart from the freshmen, everyone in that Coliseum remembers all too well the tyrant President Wolfram used to be, noticing that the blonde could easily win over the entire crowd just by trashing her brother, yet she chooses not to bring it up, wondering whether the princess did that to protect the imperial family's honor, or for another reason, but admits not hearing insults thrown at her fiancé is acceptable enough, turning her complete focus back to the fight that is about to begin, looking at the redhead, finding the whole thing a complete bore. The arena announcer introduces the official education duel between third-year magic runner-up Ayla Treestar and top freshman Kelturus, making the girl think being called number 2 is an insult to her pride. Getting annoyed just looking at that rookie's cheerful, goofy face, she formally introduces herself as the third-year representative, and the freshman eagerly responds, saying he is looking forward to the match, drawing his sword with a striking red pommel and introducing himself with a bright smile. The mage then recalls Wolfram's words in the room, thinking that even at rock bottom without a shred of talent, that man carries a gaze sharper and brighter than any noble in this empire. Deciding that on the stage her fiancé is building, she will be the shining star, remembering the provocation when he questioned if she had what it took to match his ambitions, flashing a cold and intimidating smirk, deciding to prove her overwhelming might once and for all as dozens of sharp purple crystals begin floating around her, making the rookie swallow hard and pure nerves, feeling the immense magical pressure. The elven referee starts explaining the win conditions by knockout or ring out, but the senior signals for quiet with a finger to her lips, raising her index finger and making a bold promise to her opponent, stating she will use her black crystals to launch a single strike and decrees that if he manages to block the attack, victory will be his. The boy accepts the challenge immediately, confirming he understands the deal, and the noble extends her hand, telling the kid to make the first move. The young man takes his combat stance and warns that he is charging in with everything he has got, bolting forward at blazing speed like lightning across the arena stone floor, making the mage's eyes widen in surprise at the rookie, admitting that it is impressive, the absurd speed and fearless rush he displays in his advance, noting that this freshman's level doesn't fall short of the top second-year students at all, but she snaps her fingers in the air, warning that just this won't cut it, activating the black crystal single-shot barrier formation that erects a massive wall blocking his path. And even as the redhead's blade collides against the magic defense, it remains completely intact. The senior watches with a superior air, wondering if he will try jumping over the barrier or flanking around the sides, only for the young man to keep forcing his sword against the wall, until the blood-red pommel at the base of the blade begins to glow, with the boy unleashing more power, executing the nameless swordbreaker strike that shatters the entire barrier into thousands of pieces, leaving the entire crowd in the stands completely jaw-dropped, with Princess Eve herself widening her eyes in disbelief at that freshman's absurd power, and the mage stays standing in the exact same spot, finally understanding why her fiancé told her to watch out for the kid's charging thrust, acknowledging with a smile that Wolfram's advice was flawless and dead on, while the hero leaps through the flying shards with his blade raised ready to land the finishing blow. But the noble calmly raises her hand, activating the black crystal rapid shot recombination, making the shattered pieces in midair pull back together right around the freshman, driving the fans in the bleachers into a frenzy seeing the senior's masterful turnaround, trapping the boy's body in the crystals, praising that he really kept an ace up his sleeve, but it wasn't enough, saying she actually likes the spark in his eyes but playtime is over, gathering dozens of crystals preparing the finishing strike, casting the supreme single-shot reinforcement that conjures a colossal black crystal, the size of a meteor above the arena, declaring that this rookie still lacks what it takes to become the wings of her rebellion, hurling that monster straight down at the defenseless boy, sending the freshman into sheer panic seeing that beast crashing onto his head, triggering a massive explosion across the arena, with the elven referee shielding herself from the dust and screaming out the result of the bout, confirming the overwhelming victory of Ayla Treester, who walks off with her uniform spotless while the rookie lies knocked out in the crater. And all pleased, she adjusts her hair in the breeze thinking that now she just hopes to find Wolfram's stall still open. Meanwhile in the commoner wing, the rush at the stall is in full swing with customers screaming orders for donuts and strawberry shakes, non-stop. Armex praises his helper's hustle saying hiring her was a wise call while the knight desperately begs for help at the counter. But the young man says he needs to prep for the next battle, and the girl almost loses it asking if this rush isn't already the final boss fight. The boy looks toward the horizon worried, wondering if his fiancée managed to dodge the protagonist's hit, thinking that even if she took damage, corruption doesn't trigger instantly, and that offering a nice treat should be enough to calm her down, when suddenly a cold voice drops right behind him asking whose favor he is trying to win, giving the guy a massive jump scare, with his heart racing as he replies he was talking about her, asking how the duel went. The fiancé says everything went great and notes the stall's stock is almost wiped out, regretting that she wanted to try one of the pastries. Our boy senses the danger behind that mysterious smile and holds out a bag packed with fresh snacks without a second thought, explaining that this is her reserved portion saved with the utmost care, saying he figured the fight would be a snooze fest and brought the sweets to brighten her day. The mage lets out a soft chuckle at the surprise, flashing that radiant smile and admitting he truly knows everything and that the duel was remarkably boring, leaving the young man relieved on the inside seeing his fiancée showed zero signs of corruption. She gladly accepts the gift, promising to savor every single bite, mentioning before walking off that she will pay a special visit to his convenience store later, making the boy put on an awkward smile agreeing to the visit while wondering what on earth she wants to do there, and the noble walks away watching her fiancé's silhouette under the twilight glow, thinking to herself that that man's eyes are truly captivating. Armic finally breathes a sigh of relief celebrating that he survived yet another deadly test, until he gets dragged back to reality by the knight who already has her sword out nearly dying of exhaustion demanding urgent backup at the counter. And so with his fiancée's sanity saved and 30% profit locked and the freshman welcome festival wraps up with flying colors, the knight practically bursts with joy, her eyes flashing with money signs celebrating the total triumph of their sales. And the next morning the sun shines once again over the grand buildings of the prestigious academy, where Armic strolls casually through the corridors drawing stares from every student around, with students whispering in fear unable to understand why that delinquent noble still has the nerve to attend classes instead of running back to the imperial palace, finding his presence way too eerie and terrifying to be real. While he looks back on the revenue from yesterday's sales, when he held out a fat pouch of cash to his helper delivering the agreed cut, making the knight's eyes widen in shock wanting to know how much money is inside. The boy explains that this is the promised 30% coming out to a little over 800,000 lin with the agency fee included. But the girl jumps backward saying that since this was a personal hire she waives the fee in the name of chivalric honor, snatching the bag with the full 800,000 lin screaming she will take the cash like a true knight, diving headfirst out the second-floor window sprinting away before even properly saying goodbye, leaving the young man staring at the empty window with a deadpan look thinking he was just going to tell her to take more money since there were no fees, walking through the halls remembering with a smile how fun and profitable yesterday was, only for a sharp sting in his chest to remind him that his pathetic 2 stamina points are collecting the bill for yesterday's overexertion, until his fiancée shows up with crossed arms in the hallway asking how his class went, inviting the boy with a subtle smirk to go grab lunch together. The guy makes a troubled face, wondering who gave Fu the authority to decide that, but quickly swallows his complaint to avoid getting stabbed in the gut and plays along, saying today's meal needs to be rebellious. A short while later in the noble cafeteria, the waitress asks with a smile if they would like the traditional black bread with salad, pasta with oil, or a cheeseburger. While the main hall is packed with nobles enjoying their lavish feasts, the fiancé notices the delay and asks if he still hasn't managed to pick a dish, until the young man closes the menu and calls over the waitress, demanding she bring the spiciest food the kitchen has to offer and leaving everyone stunned. Doubling down on the order in a serious tone, telling them to bring the hottest dish on the menu, with Ayla asking in alarm what on earth he is thinking of doing, remembering that despite being in a noble body, his soul is that of a true Korean who needs a massive dose of spice on the Scoville scale to cure his stress. Before long, the waitress serves a steaming bowl of spicy red chili pepper soup, with the burly head chef laughing and praising the boy's courage while warning he will regret it if he underestimates the dish, nearly having a heart attack upon recognizing the face of the dreaded Prince Wolfram thanking him for the food. The girl looks at that red bowl in disgust and asks if he really has the guts to swallow that. The boy replies that he's definitely going to eat it, commenting that just by looking at it you can tell it must be pretty spicy, picking up the metal spoon and filling it with the glowing red broth, sending the first spoonful straight down amid a tense atmosphere, freezing on the spot with heavy breathing while his fiancée panics, holding out a glass of water thinking he's dying from the burn. The young man grips the spoon so hard that the veins on his hand pop while the girl desperately asks if she needs to call a doctor, only for the boy to look up furious and blurt out with utter outrage that this food has zero spice in it, complaining angrily that the red color comes from cooked tomatoes and not real peppers. Disgusted by the lack of seasoning that doesn't burn at all, the noblewoman doubts his reaction and asks if it really isn't spicy, hearing the boy offer a spoonful for her to see for herself. She gets shy but accepts the challenge, saying she will taste the rebellious spicy flavor, bringing her lips to the spoon and swallowing a small sip of the broth, only to widen her eyes in absolute shock, the very next second feeling her mouth catch on fire, starting to cough and scream in desperation as if she swallowed molten lava, slamming the table gasping for air while tears stream down her burning red face, until the young man pulls out a cup with a straw and hands over the cold strawberry shake that saves the girl's life in seconds, breathing a sigh of relief for bringing the drink he had originally prepped as an emergency treat for his sister, while the fiancé wipes her tears, sniffling and asking how any human being can eat something so absurdly spicy. The boy counters, saying that was way too weak, and that if he made it he would never leave it so mild, with the girl admitting she now understands his standard. When suddenly a dark voice pops up out of nowhere between them, agreeing that the soup has no kick at all, making the couple nearly jump out of their chairs in fright, revealing a little white-haired girl with a green ribbon holding a spoon and saying she also agrees with his take. In that very instant, RMZ turns pale with fear upon recognizing that deadly presence, none other than Ludica Hassan Shadow, a third-year student from the magic department, remembering that in DZ's saga there was an assassination bad ending route where if the player committed too many evil acts like abandoning party members in dungeons, dropping crucial quests to burn down the kingdom, or slaughtering innocent villages just for fun, she would pop up at some point in the game, whispering that the player had crossed every line with their evil deeds, striking without giving the slightest chance to react, resulting in the classic instant death black screen where the hero is completely wiped out, and the boy shakes in his boots, remembering that girl was the Academy's legendary Reaper responsible for hunting down the worst criminals, with the assassin staring right at Wolfram and calmly asking if he can cook real spicy food for her. As night falls inside the convenience store, our boy sits thoughtfully on the sofa, calculating that the odds of getting assassinated by her right now are practically zero, since as she came to kill him, she would have decapitated the guy in the very first second of their chat. But since catching the attention of a professional assassin is way too dangerous, he decides to hire Nefty as his personal guard at the shop, securing his protection with the knight, gladly accepting the fat daily wage with all the joy in the world, when suddenly the air in the room freezes and Wolfram's name echoes with a terrifying pressure, leaving the bodyguard in a panic upon sensing the presence of the Reaper, revealing Ludica hanging upside down from the ceiling beams like a genuine phantom, dropping down silently and landing right in the middle of the room, making Armik shrink back into the sofa with his heart in his throat as the assassin lands right before him, while the girl glares at Armik demanding the spicy food he promised, and demanding to know if the spicy dish is ready yet. And that wraps up the latest chapter released so far. Will our shopkeeper be able to win over the Reaper with his spice, or is he about to become history? If you enjoyed the story, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you catch new chapters the moment they drop. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will catch you in the next one.